The unexpected discovery. The quiet hum of machinery filled the air in the remote human research station, far from the eyes of the galaxy's most powerful races. The station was tucked away in a forgotten corner of space, isolated from the busy trade routes and the bustling activity of more advanced civilizations. For years, it had been nothing more than a curiosity, a small research project, with no real significance. No one in the galaxy ever thought that anything important would come from Earth. Humanity was just another primitive race, a collection of small nations on a blue and green planet. To the larger powers in the galaxy, they were little more than a joke. But today, something was different. Today, something happened that would change the balance of power across the stars. Dr. Lucas Carter, a scientist leading one of the most secretive and underfunded projects in human history, was the first to notice it. He sat hunched over his desk, staring at the screen in disbelief. He had been working for weeks, making small adjustments to the strange device they had been developing, something they had come to call Project Thunderstrike. It had begun as a simple idea, a way to explore the possibilities of advanced energy weapons. But now, it was something far more dangerous. Today, the railgun prototype they had been testing had just fired for the first time, and it had fired perfectly. "Impossible," Carter whispered, his voice barely audible as he read the data scrolling across the screen. The weapon, which had been designed to shoot projectiles at the speed of sound, had just launched an electromagnetic pulse that exceeded all expectations. Instead of the small, controlled blast they had anticipated, it had shot a massive energy beam capable of destroying even the most advanced ships in space. "Someone has to see this," Carter muttered to himself, shaking his head in disbelief. He quickly typed in a request to the station's command center, urging them to send a team of engineers to investigate the device. But even as the message was sent, his mind raced with the implications. He knew they were on the verge of something monumental, something that could forever alter humanity's place in the galaxy. Outside the research station, the cold, silent darkness of space stretched on for eternity. The station, orbiting a small moon, was invisible to the powerful empires of the galaxy. Their ships moved through the stars, racing past Earth, unaware that humanity had begun to make a weapon unlike anything they had ever seen. For years, the alien races had dismissed Earth as a minor, insignificant world. Earth's technologies were nothing special, primitive by galactic standards. But now, that was all about to change. As Dr. Carter sent out his request, something strange happened. The energy reading from the railgun test began to spike uncontrollably. Something was wrong. He checked the readings again and again, each time expecting to see a mistake or glitch. But it was all too real. The energy from the railgun was heading straight into deep space, far beyond Earth's atmosphere. The impact of this discovery rippled outward, traveling faster than any ship could move, faster than any communication could travel. No one on Earth knew, but something had been triggered. A signal had been sent to the far reaches of space, a warning to anyone who might be listening. The galaxy's most powerful races were about to learn that humanity had something in its possession that they could never have imagined. And the reaction would be swift. Within hours, the signal reached the nearest alien fleet, the Zarkari Empire, a race of ruthless conquerors known for their advanced weaponry and enormous warships, intercepted the pulse. At first, they believed it was nothing more than a random signal, some kind of glitch from a primitive world. But as they analyzed the data, their computers flagged something unusual. The signal contained an unprecedented amount of energy, something far beyond the capabilities of any known species. The Zarkari fleet's intelligence officers scrambled to understand what they had found. "Impossible," General Zorin, the fleet commander, muttered to himself, staring at the data. "A weapon like this, from a human world." His officers exchanged nervous glances. The Zarkari had always considered Earth an insignificant world, a planet of little consequence. But now, this discovery had raised more questions than answers. What was this strange new weapon, And how had the humans created it? The galaxy's most powerful empires, Creel, Valdari, and the Drath, had long held the belief that humanity was nothing more than a weak, unthreatening species, incapable of even defending its own world. But the power behind this signal suggested something entirely different. "It must be a trap," General Zoran said, shaking his head. "There's no way humans could create something like this." But deep down, he knew that they couldn't afford to take any chances. If the humans truly had a weapon of this magnitude, it would change everything. The balance of power in the galaxy could shift overnight. While the Zarkari plotted their next move, Earth was still oblivious to the growing danger. Dr. Carter and his team were already in the process of analyzing the results of the test, unaware that their discovery was about to provoke the wrath of the galaxy's most powerful empires. But as they reviewed the data, Carter couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. He had unlocked a power that could change the future of the galaxy, but what if it fell into the wrong hands? The answer would soon come, as the first signs of an alien fleet appeared in the distance. The galaxy would never be the same again. The alien response. The unexpected discovery of humanity's new weapon didn't just send ripples through Earth's quiet research stations, it shook the very foundation of galactic power. Dr. Carter and his team were still piecing together the Railguns' capabilities, blissfully unaware that the very moment they had unleashed this new technology, it had already set off alarms across the galaxy. Back on the Zarkari flagship, the tension was palpable. General Zoran paced across the command deck, his mind racing through the possibilities. The sheer power of the signal had unsettled him. It was unlike anything the Zarkari had encountered before. What kind of primitive species could wield a force so strong, so focused? They were supposed to be weak, primitive. Humans had only recently made their first contact with galactic spacefarers, and the Zarkari had regarded them as nothing more than a nuisance. But now, there was no mistaking it. They were a potential threat. The general paused in front of a large viewing window that looked out into the void of space. The Zarkari fleet was massive, its warships armed with technology that could obliterate entire planets. But this new signal wasn't just energy, it was a message. Something deeper, something more troubling. "Prepare a fleet to investigate the source of that signal," General Zoran ordered, his voice low and commanding. His officers rushed to their stations, executing his orders without hesitation. The Zarkari might have underestimated humanity, but no more. The galaxy's most ruthless empire was on the move. While Zarkari warships began to gather, an even more concerning force was already aware of humanity's breakthrough. The Creel Empire, a race known for their ability to manipulate dark matter, had long held sway over much of the galaxy. Their ships were capable of harnessing the power of black holes, bending the fabric of space to their will. Their spies, scattered across the stars, had already intercepted the strange energy signal sent from Earth. "Activate our fleet," declared Empress Zalia, the Creel ruler. Her voice was ice-cold, laced with authority. She stood in front of a massive star map that displayed the galaxies in intricate detail. The Creel had ruled with fear for centuries, and the idea of humanity suddenly stepping into the arena of galactic power was unacceptable. Her advisors exchanged uneasy glances. The Creel Empire had never had to worry about humans before. Their previous encounters with Earth had been brief, inconsequential. But this new development could be a game-changer. Zalia's thoughts turned toward the history of the galaxy. There was an ancient prophecy, one that spoke of a species, hidden in the shadows of the universe, that would rise to challenge the dominant powers. For centuries, the Creel had thought this prophecy referred to the Drath, an aggressive, war-hungry species whose territory had bordered Creel holdings. But now, there was a possibility, an unsettling possibility, that the prophecy was about humanity. We must act quickly. If these humans have truly unlocked this kind of power, Zelia's voice trailed off, her mind already calculating the next steps. The galaxy could not afford to let this primitive species grow beyond its control. Across the galaxy, the Valdari, The third of the major galactic powers had also taken notice. Known for their stealth technology and guerrilla tactics, the Valdari had always been careful observers, waiting for the right moment to strike. They had watched humans from afar, unimpressed by their capabilities. But now, as they analyzed the signal from Earth, their calculations confirmed something startling. Humanity had just gained access to a power that could potentially threaten their empire. The Valdari War Council convened in the deepest chambers of their capital ship, a sleek vessel designed for both offense and espionage. Their leader, Prime Strategist Varen, sat silently, eyes closed in thought. He had seen the data coming in from their fleet. The humans' new weapon was a formidable one. If properly harnessed, it could tip the balance in the galaxy. "We must monitor them," Varen said coldly. "But we must also prepare for the worst. If they awaken this weapon fully, it will not only destabilize the Zarkari and the Creel, it will destabilize everything. And we cannot allow that." On Earth, Dr. Carter was still working late into the night. His team had spent hours analyzing the Railguns' power, but every test they ran led to more questions. The readings were fluctuating wildly. One moment, they would get results beyond anything even the most advanced spacefaring civilizations could achieve. The next moment, the readings would revert to something much more primitive, as if the device were intentionally holding back its full potential. Carter couldn't ignore the growing feeling of unease. Something was happening. They were on the verge of something massive, something that had the potential to change everything. But they were far from ready. The data was incomplete. They didn't have a clear understanding of the Railguns' capabilities. They needed more time to test, more time to refine it. But time was a luxury humanity no longer had. Just as Carter was about to leave for the night, an emergency transmission came through. His heart skipped a beat as the screen blinked to life. It was a message from Earth's Central Command, a warning. "Dr. Carter, we've intercepted several signals. Alien fleets are heading toward Earth. We don't know what they want, but we believe they've discovered our railgun tests. Prepare for the worst." Carter's blood ran cold. The galaxy had noticed them. They had sent a message, whether intentional or not, and the universe was coming to collect. The call for help had been answered. The fate of Earth now lay in the hands of a weapon they barely understood. The first encounter. The tension on Earth was palpable. As the days passed, the atmosphere in the scientific community shifted. What was once a mission of exploration and curiosity had quickly transformed into a desperate fight for survival. Dr. Carter couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. The Railgun project, initially just a scientific curiosity, was now Earth's last line of defense. On the surface, everything appeared normal. The world continued as it always had, with cities bustling and life going on. But behind the scenes, governments, scientists, and military leaders worked frantically to prepare for the unknown. The Earth's military began making preparations, with fleets stationed at key points around the globe, ready to respond to any threat. Yet no one truly knew what to expect. How could they? Alien civilizations, some of them millennia ahead in technology, had never viewed humanity as a serious threat. Now, that was changing. And fast. Meanwhile, in the cold void of space, the Zarkari fleet was already en route to Earth. Led by General Zoran, the fleet moved with cold precision. The Zarkari were no strangers to intergalactic war, and their ships, built for destruction, were among the most feared in the galaxy. But this mission was different. It wasn't just about conquering or claiming territory. It was about eliminating a growing threat before it could reach its full potential. Zoran stood at the helm of the lead flagship, his hands clasped behind his back as he stared out at the swirling galaxy ahead. He had studied Earth's history. He knew that humans were capable of unexpected feats, but he still didn't fully understand what had transpired. Railguns? A primitive weapon that could deliver immense energy. It was baffling. But the Zarkari would not make the mistake of underestimating humanity. The Empire had already made that error too many times before. "Sir, the fleet is ready," a voice interrupted his thoughts. "Good. Let's make sure Earth knows their place," Zoran replied coldly, his voice like ice. The Zarkari were not in the business of negotiating or making deals. The only thing they understood was domination. As the fleet neared Earth's orbit, however, an unexpected transmission came through, cutting through the usual static. The message was simple but clear. A human ship was approaching, a lone vessel that wasn't on any known military or civilian list. The ship wasn't supposed to exist. Back on Earth, Dr. Carter was startled by the news of an unregistered vessel entering the planet's atmosphere. The ship, described as black as the void, was suddenly on the radar, heading directly toward the planet's surface. "No one's ever seen a ship like this before," Carter muttered under his breath, his mind racing. What was this mysterious craft? How could it have appeared out of nowhere? Within hours, the mysterious ship landed near Earth's military headquarters. The authorities were on edge, unsure of what to expect. The ship was unmarked, sleek and massive, dwarfing even the largest human warships. It didn't seem hostile, but it was impossible to tell. The Earth's leaders gathered to discuss what to do next. As the ship's ramp descended, a figure emerged, cloaked in dark armor. The crowd of military personnel held their breath. What was this visitor, and why had it arrived now, just as the Zarkari fleet was closing in? The figure's voice echoed through the tense air. "We are the Vectari, and we have come to assist you." The Vectari were an ancient species, one whose existence was only whispered about in galactic history. They had remained hidden for centuries, watching over the development of younger civilizations, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. And now, they had decided to reveal themselves to humanity. Dr. Carter stood frozen as the message sank in. What did the Vectari want with humanity? Why now? How could they possibly know of the railgun technology? There were more questions than answers, but one thing was certain. Humanity had just become a player in a galactic game far beyond their understanding. The Vectari's leader, a being of immense stature and ancient wisdom, explained that they had been monitoring Earth's advancements for decades. They had watched as humanity struggled to find its place in the cosmos, seen the moments of brilliance and the failures. But the awakening of the railgun technology had caught their attention. They knew that the galaxy's power structures were shifting, and they were ready to take action. "You have unlocked a power beyond what you can understand," the Vectari leader said. "The Zarkari, the Creel, and the Valdari have all taken notice. They are coming for you, and they will stop at nothing to ensure you do not rise." Dr. Carter felt a chill run down his spine. The Zarkari, the Creel, the Valdari, alien empires that had ruled the galaxy for eons, were coming for Earth. They would not stop until humanity was crushed. But the Vectari had offered an unexpected hope. "We will help you defend yourselves," the Vectari leader continued. "But you must prepare. The coming conflict will test everything you have. Your technology, your courage, your resolve. You will need more than the railgun to survive." And so, Earth's fate took a dramatic turn. The arrival of the Vectari, an unexpected ally, gave humanity a glimmer of hope. But the galaxy's mightiest empires were already on their way, and the real fight was about to begin. As Earth's leaders debated their next move, the Zarkari fleet was only hours away. The stage was set for a battle that would decide the fate of not only Earth but the entire galaxy. Would humanity rise to the challenge, or would they fall beneath the weight of galactic might? The countdown had begun, the gathering storm. As the days passed, the tension on Earth grew unbearable. The presence of the Vectari had offered a glimmer of hope, but the stakes were higher than anyone could have imagined. Dr. Carter, once a scientist with a focus on theoretical physics, now found himself at the heart of a battle that could determine the future of humanity. The Zarkari fleet was coming, and there was no time to waste. In a hidden facility, deep beneath Earth's military headquarters, the most brilliant minds of the planet gathered. Scientists, engineers, military strategists, and even a few of the Vectaries experts, who were not entirely forthcoming about their history or technology, worked together to prepare for the impending invasion. The railgun, humanity's ultimate weapon, was being upgraded, but that was just the beginning. "We don't know the full strength of the Zarkari," Dr. Carter said, staring at the holographic displays that showed the incoming fleet. "But one thing is certain. They won't hesitate to destroy us if they see any weakness." The Vectari had shared their knowledge of the Zarkari, but even with their help, humanity was still facing an uphill battle. The Zarkari were ruthless, cold-blooded conquerors with a fleet that could obliterate entire planets, and they had a technology far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. Despite the odds, Dr. Carter couldn't shake the feeling that humanity's strength lay not just in technology, but in something deeper, something the Zarkari had never understood. It was the human spirit, the unyielding drive to survive, to adapt, to fight even when all seemed lost. Meanwhile, in the heart of the Zarkari fleet, General Zoran paced restlessly. His fleet was prepared, and the mission was clear. Earth must be eradicated. The railguns, if they were even functioning properly, would not be enough to stop the might of the Zarkari war machines. His victory was all but assured. "Prepare the fleet for immediate deployment," Zoran commanded, his voice cold and detached. "We will crush Earth and wipe their foolish hope from the galaxy. Their resistance will be nothing more than a fleeting moment." Zoran was confident. The Zarkari had faced countless civilizations before, each one falling to their superior technology and overwhelming firepower. Humanity was no different. The thought of an unarmed planet rising up to challenge the might of the Zarkari seemed laughable. Back on Earth, Dr. Carter was still reeling from the Vectari's cryptic warning. "The railgun is not enough. You must prepare for more." The Vectari's leader had said little else about the coming battle, but their words had stayed with Carter. What else did they know? What had they seen in the galaxy that made them so fearful of the Zarkari? Was there something more to the railgun than anyone realized? With only hours to spare, the preparations ramped up. The railgun was upgraded with a power source capable of delivering the kind of energy humanity had only dreamed of. But the Vectari insisted that Earth needed more than just firepower. "You have underestimated the true nature of war," the Vectari leader had said. "The Zarkari do not fight for territory or riches. They fight for domination, and they will destroy anything that stands in their way. You must learn to think beyond just weapons." Dr. Carter was puzzled. What could the Vectari mean? What kind of knowledge could they be hiding? As he watched the engineers work, modifying the railgun, he couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The clock was ticking, and Earth had no more time to waste. Then came the call. The Zarkari fleet was entering Earth's solar system. The first wave was on the way. Their ships were massive, black hulks that blocked out the stars. The warships seemed to absorb light, their edges sharp and angular, as if designed to invoke fear itself. The fleet's arrival was an omen. It was the beginning of the end, or so it seemed. The military scrambled to put Earth's defenses in place. Satellites were retasked to monitor the Zarkari approach, and the railgun was moved into position. The world held its breath. But just as humanity prepared to fight for its survival, the Vectari made a stunning revelation. They had been tracking the Zarkari for millennia. They had witnessed their rise, their conquests, their endless hunger for destruction. The Zarkari were unlike any enemy humanity had ever faced. "They will not stop," the Vectari leader said, their voice laced with an edge of fear. "Their invasion will be swift, and it will be brutal. Then we fight," Dr. Carter replied, his voice filled with determination. "We will show them that humanity is not something to be conquered." The first battle was inevitable. Humanity's railgun, the symbol of Earth's technological rebirth, would be tested in the fires of war. The Zarkari would come, but humanity's will to survive and to fight was something the Zarkari could never predict. The black ships of the Zarkari were already on the move, and with every second, Earth drew closer to the moment when everything would change. The galaxy would never be the same again. The first strike. The countdown had begun. The Zarkari fleet, a terrifying wall of darkness, loomed ever closer to Earth. Their approach was swift, calculated, and unstoppable. In the dark expanse of space, the sight of their warships, black as voids and bristling with weaponry, filled every observer with a deep, unsettling fear. Humanity had never faced anything like this before. They had always been the underdogs, the lesser species in a galaxy full of superior beings. But now, humanity stood at the precipice of extinction. In the control room beneath Earth's surface, Dr. Carter and the other military leaders stood motionless, staring at the screens. The railgun was ready, but it was more than just a weapon now. It was humanity's last stand. The sheer power contained within it had been unimaginable until now. But now, with the Zarkari fleet closing in, there was no turning back. "Prepare for the first strike," Dr. Carter commanded, his voice steady but filled with urgency. The engineers rushed to their stations, fine-tuning the systems that would activate the railgun. It had been modified beyond recognition. Its enormous barrel stretched high into the sky, its energy pulse capable of delivering a devastating blow to anything that came into its path. But the Zarkari had the numbers. They had the firepower. And the railgun, as powerful as it was humanity's only chance. For a moment, there was silence in the room. The soldiers, the scientists, and the engineers knew that in mere minutes, they would either win or lose everything. No one spoke. The weight of the situation was too much. Suddenly, the alert sounded. The Zarkari fleet had arrived at Earth's orbit. Their ships began to form a tight formation, preparing for the assault. From Earth's perspective, the sheer size of the Zarkari fleet was staggering. It was like an unstoppable storm of darkness, consuming everything in its path. "We have no choice," Dr. Carter muttered under his breath. "We strike first." He gave the order. The energy within the railgun surged to life, crackling with raw power. It was a beast, a force of nature that had never been seen on Earth before. The giant weapon fired with a deafening roar, sending a massive pulse of energy into the blackness of space. For a split second, time seemed to stand still. The bright, blinding light of the railgun's shot cut through the dark void like a spear of pure destruction. The first shot hit one of the Zarkari ships squarely in the center. There was no explosion, no dramatic flash. The ship simply crumpled under the force of the blast, its hull bending and warping before it disintegrated into dust. It was a sight that no one could have imagined. Dr. Carter watched in disbelief as the massive warship shattered in the blink of an eye. The destruction was absolute. For a moment, it seemed impossible that humanity's single shot had done so much damage. But then, reality set in. "We hit them," one of the engineers whispered, eyes wide with shock. "We actually hit them." But the relief was short-lived. The Zarkari fleet didn't stop. It didn't falter. The warships continued their approach, as if nothing had happened. They were unstoppable. "Get ready," Dr. Carter said, his voice low and steady, despite the fear that gnawed at his insides. This is just the beginning. The Zarkari had underestimated Earth. They had thought that humanity was weak, primitive, and nothing more than a fleeting nuisance. But they had made a grave mistake. In their arrogance, they had ignored the potential power of the human spirit. The Zarkari returned fire, launching a barrage of energy blasts from their enormous warships. The blast wave shook the very foundation of Earth's defenses. The first volley of shots missed, but it was only a matter of time before they found their mark. The human forces scrambled to activate their shields and countermeasures, knowing that they had no margin for error. This was no longer just a battle for survival. It was a fight for the future of the entire human race. "We can't take another hit like that," the commander of Earth's defense force said urgently. "We need more time to recharge the railgun." "We don't have that time," Dr. Carter replied. "We have one shot, maybe two, before they overwhelm us." The tension in the control room was palpable. The Vectari, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. Their leader's eyes were filled with urgency. "The Zarkari will come at you with everything they have," the Vectari leader warned. "You must strike with precision. You cannot afford to waste a shot." It was then that Dr. Carter realized the gravity of their situation. He had always known that humanity's strength lay not in sheer firepower, but in their ability to adapt, to think on their feet, and to learn from their mistakes. The Zarkari were a force to be reckoned with, but Earth had something they did not: the will to fight, the will to survive. "The railgun is humanity's weapon," Dr. Carter said, his voice hardening with resolve. "And we will make it count." As the Zarkari closed in, humanity's forces braced for the final strike. It was a race against time. Would humanity be able to unleash its greatest weapon in time? Or would the Zarkari's overwhelming might crush Earth's last hope? The first volley from the Zarkari hit, sending shockwaves through the air. Earth's defenses held, but for how long? The fate of the galaxy was now hanging by a thread. The battle had only just begun, and the galaxy would never be the same again. But one thing was clear: humanity would not go down without a fight. The power of unity. The blast from the Zarkari warships was deafening. The shockwave that followed rattled the Earth's surface and caused waves to ripple through the atmosphere. The entire defense system of Earth groaned under the weight of the incoming assault, but somehow the shields held. Inside the control room, Dr. Carter and the military leaders were on high alert. The railgun had just been recharged, and the engineers were desperately working to prepare for another shot. They knew the Zarkari would not stop. They had launched their first volley, but this was just the beginning. Humanity's fragile defenses could not withstand a sustained attack. The railgun's chamber hummed with energy, the heart of the weapon glowing bright. It was their best hope, but it was clear now that one shot wasn't going to be enough. Humanity was facing an enemy that had never shown mercy, a galactic empire that had crushed countless civilizations. The Zarkari were ruthless. They would not relent. And yet, Earth wasn't giving up. "We have to push through," Dr. Carter said, his voice calm but filled with tension. "Get that railgun ready. Now." A voice came through the speaker, urgent and sharp. "Sir, we're not ready. The system needs at least 5 more minutes for a full charge. We can't hold them off for that long." Dr. Carter clenched his fists. "We don't have 5 minutes. We don't even have 5 seconds. We fire now, or we lose everything." The engineers were working as fast as they could, rerouting power and bypassing systems to give them the extra juice needed. Outside the control room, the hum of the railgun's core echoed through the walls, growing louder and more intense as the weapon prepared to discharge again. The Zarkari ships were closing in rapidly, and with every passing second, they brought Earth closer to annihilation. Humanity's forces were doing their best to deflect the energy blasts, but the Zarkari warships were relentless. The entire fleet was now within striking range, and soon they would make their final push. But then something unexpected happened. A pulse of light filled the control room, not from the railgun, but from the far side of the chamber. Dr. Carter turned to find the Vectari standing silently, their eyes narrowed in concentration. "What is it?" Dr. Carter demanded. "We don't have time for this." The Vectari leader raised a hand, signaling for calm. "You are not alone," he said quietly. "We are not the only ones who have been watching the Zarkari for eons. There are others who have been waiting, watching, and now they are ready to fight." Dr. Carter's eyes widened in disbelief. "What are you talking about? Who's ready to fight?" The Vectari gave a subtle nod, and the space around the chamber seemed to ripple. Suddenly, more ships appeared on the radar, human-made ships, but not of Earth's design. Their sleek, advanced forms shimmered as if they had materialized out of nowhere. They were not alone. "These are the RA Riders," the Vectari leader explained. "They are a group of alien fighters who have been scattered across the galaxy, but they owe a debt to Earth for the aid you once gave them." Dr. Carter's heart skipped a beat. Earth's hope now lay not only in the power of the railgun, but in the strength of these unknown allies. The screens flickered as the incoming fleet of R-80 riders powered up their own weapons. Their ships, though smaller and more agile than the Zarkari dreadnoughts, were equipped with advanced technology that rivaled the Zarkari's might. Together, the two forces, human and alien, would make their stand against the invaders. "What is their plan?" Dr. Carter asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. "They have the skills you lack," the Vectari leader said. "The riders have mastered combat techniques you can only dream of, but more importantly, they know how to strike at the Zarkari's weakness. They have been waiting for this moment for centuries." Outside, the Zarkari fleet launched another barrage of energy blasts, their ships closing in, preparing to deliver the final blow. Humanity's railgun was primed and ready, but they needed time to reload and fire. The shield was buckling under the pressure, and they could only take so many more hits. Suddenly, the R-80 riders moved into position, their ships weaving in and out of the Zarkari fleet with terrifying precision. They didn't rely on raw power. Instead, they moved with grace, dodging blasts and countering with surgical strikes that pierced through the Zarkari ships with incredible accuracy. "What's happening?" one of the engineers shouted. "The Zarkari are losing ships." The Zarkari warships were firing wildly now, but the riders had outmaneuvered them at every turn. Their speed, agility, and coordination were overwhelming the Zarkari, throwing them off balance. One by one, the Zarkari ships began to fall, their shields unable to protect them from the riders' pinpoint attacks. Dr. Carter watched in awe as the unthinkable happened. The Zarkari, who had once appeared invincible, were being torn apart by these smaller, more agile ships. Humanity was no longer fighting alone. The tide of battle was turning. "We can do this," Dr. Carter muttered to himself. "We're not alone." With the riders' intervention, Earth's forces had the breathing room they needed. The railgun was ready again, and this time, Dr. Carter knew they had a chance. As the Zarkari regrouped, the combined forces of humanity and their newfound allies prepared for the final strike. The galaxy would never be the same again. The final showdown. The Zarkari fleet was in disarray. Their once unbreakable formation had splintered, leaving them vulnerable to both the precision strikes of the R-80 riders and the devastating power of Earth's railgun. The atmosphere had shifted. What was once a hopeless battle was now a fight humanity could win. The Zarkari commanders were furious. Their ships were falling, their lines were broken, and their plans for galactic domination were crumbling before their eyes. But the Zarkari were not known for retreating, not when victory seemed so close. They were preparing for one final desperate assault, a full-on barrage that would wipe out Earth and its allies in one devastating strike. "Prepare for the final assault," the lead Zarkari commander barked over the intercom. "We will crush them. All ships, converge on Earth's defenses. Do not allow them to retaliate." On Earth, Dr. Carter and his team watched the developments on their monitors. The Zarkari fleet, though wounded, was gathering for their last push. Earth's forces, though bolstered by the R-80 riders, knew they needed to act quickly. The next few minutes would decide the fate of their world. "We need to take the Zarkari fleet out before they can launch their final strike," Dr. Carter said, his voice tense. "Riders, focus on their flagship. If we take that down, the rest will crumble." The R-80 riders' leader, a tall figure with glowing markings on his face, nodded in acknowledgement. "We understand. We will deliver the final blow." The battle had turned into chaos. Zarkari ships darted around the battlefield, launching volleys of energy blasts at both Earth's defenses and the attacking riders. The black ships of the riders were quick and agile, dodging the heavy fire and returning precision shots that hit their targets with deadly accuracy. Meanwhile, the railgun stood ready, awaiting its turn. In the midst of it all, the Zarkari flagship, a massive vessel surrounded by several smaller ships, loomed ominously in the distance. It was the heart of the Zarkari fleet, and if destroyed, it would be a blow they would not recover from. The riders knew their target, and they charged toward it with unwavering resolve. "This is it," the lead rider said, his voice calm and calculated. "For Earth. For the galaxy." As the riders closed in on the flagship, the Zarkari commander on board the massive warship realized the gravity of the situation. Their fleet was failing, their ships were falling, and the final strike was their only chance at survival. He ordered every available ship to converge on the riders. But it was too late. The riders' precision attacks overwhelmed the Zarkari's defenses. In a breathtaking display of speed and skill, the riders pierced the flagship's outer hull, and a series of explosions followed as their weapons found weak points in the ship's structure. The Zarkari flagship began to crumble. "Now," Dr. Carter shouted, his voice filled with urgency, "fire the railgun." With a loud hum, the massive weapon discharged, sending a pulse of energy that cut through the remaining Zarkari warships like a hot knife through butter. The beam struck the flagship directly, and in an instant, the entire ship was engulfed in a blinding explosion. The Zarkari fleet, without their flagship, began to falter. Their coordination was lost, and their remaining ships scattered in a futile attempt to flee. One by one, the remaining ships were picked off by the riders, their advanced weaponry and tactics proving too much for the Zarkari's retreating forces. The once unimaginable had happened. Earth, with the help of the R80 riders, had turned the tide. The Zarkari fleet, which had been poised to destroy everything, was no more. As the final remnants of the Zarkari fleet exploded in the distance, Dr. Carter let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The battle was over. Earth was safe for now. The Zarkari would never threaten the galaxy again. The R8 riders circled above, their ships glowing as they signaled their victory. The humans below looked up in awe, knowing that they owed their survival to these mysterious allies. "We did it," Dr. Carter said quietly. "Against all odds, we did it." But even as they celebrated, the quiet hum of Earth's railgun reminded them of something deeper. Humanity's fight wasn't over. The galaxy was vast, and though this battle had been won, there were always new challenges on the horizon. And now, humanity stood as a force to be reckoned with, stronger than ever, with allies from across the stars. The universe had just learned what it truly meant to underestimate Earth.